Shabbos Kavod Oneg. This week Parshas Terumah and Shabbos Zachar. Just a quick idea on the Parsha that I was reviewing recently. Rashi and the Ramban have a famous machlokas regarding the Mishkan. What is the purpose of the Mishkan? Was it always meant to be, or was it only on the heels of doing the sin of the golden calf? According to Rashi, and Rashi runs with this idea that Ein Muktam Muktam Torah, that when you find a Parsha in one spot, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where it historically happened or chronologically happened. Rather, it's there for a reason. Sometimes the reason is known, sometimes the reason is not explained. But the primary purpose of the Torah is to be moreh, to teach us the way, and it's not a history book. So Rashi's not bothered by the fact that sometimes things occur before or after they historically happened. A perfect instance of that, according to Rashi, is this week's Parsha, the command to build a Mishkan. According to Rashi, the Mishkan, the building of that, is only a rectification after the sin of the golden calf. The sin of the golden calf doesn't happen until a couple of weeks from now in Parshas Kisisa. So Rashi runs with that approach and says that this command actually happened after that, and the purpose of building the Mishkan is to once again prepare ourselves to that heightened level to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And once the sin of the golden calf happened, it wasn't able to happen within ourselves, so therefore we have to go to a special place. The Ramban, on the other hand, wants to say that no, the Parshas were written in order, and therefore the Mishkan, the commandment to build the Mishkan, was actually in this week's Parsha, and that precedes the sin of the golden calf. So according to the Ramban, it actually was always part of the blueprint to have a place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to dwell amongst us, Kaviyachol. And it's an interesting approach then. Therefore, according to Rashi, the Mishkan is built for human beings. According to the Ramban, the Mishkan is built as if it were for Hashem. Hashem wants a place where we could come in and be close to Him, and it was built exclusively for His purpose. It wasn't necessarily for us. The Tzvar Shlomo has a very interesting insight that works well with this as well. He says in the beginning of his Sefer HaMoadim, based off Pasuk in Divrei Yamim, regarding David wasn't allowed to build a Beis HaMikdash. So the way we're always taught that is that his hands were bloody. He was rightfully so. He was murderous, but he wasn't the person that was supposed to put the yisod, the foundation to base. Sorry, he put the yisod, the foundation to the Beis HaMikdash, but he wasn't the apropos person to build the entire edifice because he wasn't necessarily someone that I guess could be the conduit to that place of peace. And Shlomo, on the other hand, who wasn't engaged in warfare, and his job was fundamentally to bring peace to the world and bring peace between mankind. His job was to build the Beis HaMikdash. In this light, though, the Torah Shlomo says something interesting, that the reason why David did not build the Beis HaMikdash is because he was on a higher level than Shlomo, and therefore he didn't require it. Sort of like the Rashi sentiment that when Klal Yisrael was initially on the higher level, they didn't need a Beis HaMikdash. Whereas Shlomo, he didn't reach necessarily the echelons of his father. There are definitely Gemaras that support this, with the Gemara debating whether or not Shlomo was right for certain actions that he did, etc. Shlomo did require Beis HaMikdash to be able to bring his malchus personally, as well as all of his subjects, back under the edifice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He needed a place to go to. So with that in mind, unfortunately we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, but we can learn through the Parsha and reconnect with the various elements, and obviously there's a lot of allegory, very, very interesting things throughout the Parsha. One more thing I want to share before we go. We have two wonderful guests this week. We have Rabbi Rafi Mollot, who's going to be with us shortly, as well as Srivki Weisberg, very well-known photographer and an unbelievable talent in the realm of simcha photography and cinematography. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Srivki Weisberg, and I'm the owner of Srivki Photography. When Mike approached me to do this, I successfully pushed him off until we worked a job together Monday night, and it's much harder to say no in person, so here I am. What I'm doing tonight is taking a giant leap out of my current comfort zone, so please bear with me. Of course, because I procrastinated, I ended up with a Parsha that I honestly don't know much about, and I panicked that I wouldn't really have anything to say. It's amazing, though, how the seemingly technical aspects of Terumah and the Mishkan have a real application to our everyday life once you take a closer look. I'm going to focus on the Kruvim, the cherubs that sat on the Aron. I found a fantastic article by Rabbi Dr. Mordechai Schiffman, and this podcast is based on his article. The Kruvim, says Rashi, were Demut Partzuf Tinok Lahem. They had the likeness of a child's face. The Baal HaTurim also suggests this based on the Gemara in Sukkah. Kruv is usually spelled Kaf Resh Vav Bet or Beis, but in this place it's spelled without the Vav. Rabbi Abahu connects this to the Aramaic word Ravya, which means child. So Keruv is Karavya, like a child. What's so significant about a child? When I get in the car with my 4-year-old daughter, I get a barrage of questions. What does that sign say? Stop. What are those stones called? Tombstones. Why is it snowing? I don't know. I wish it would stop. Who's picking me up today? A child is on an endless quest for knowledge and understanding. They're constantly learning new things and discovering new things they want to learn about. Rabbi Simcha Zissel Ziv in the Chachma U'Maser quotes Socrates. The only thing I know is that I know nothing. He goes on to say that this is in line with the view of our Chachamim. If you think about it, one of the greatest praises to say about someone is that they're a Talmid Chacham, which actually translates as a student of wisdom. Even the greatest and most knowledgeable of our Gedolim are still called students. That is because they're on a never-ending quest for Torah knowledge and an endless thirst to learn. The Kli Yakar supports this concept. He points out that the dimensions of the Aron are made up completely of half numbers. He says this is because the Aron represents the Torah, and the half measurements represent incompleteness. When it comes to Torah, we should all know that there's no such thing as a finished product. There's always more there's always more to learn and to grow. If we take this concept a step further, we can use it in all of our daily lives and not just in our Torah learning. There are different ways to go about attaining knowledge. One can pursue the learning with an end goal in mind, say a profession, and once there, just enjoy the fruits of their labor. But that person will eventually get bored and jaded. After all, if there's nothing new to work towards or achieve, life can get very, very dull. However, if a person is constantly growing and learning, then their job will evolve with them and they'll stay current and excited. Think about it. A doctor can't just finish medical school and be done with books. They need to research and stay up to date with medical journals and new scientific data. A stockbroker needs to stay on top of the market. Otherwise, they'll not know where to invest. As a photographer, I feel like I'll never be finished. And in fact, sometimes I feel like I have barely scratched the surface of all I want to master. If we take this lesson from the Kruvim and the Aron and apply it to our lives, we'll never be bored. We'll never be complacent because there are so many questions to ask and so many things to learn. Have a good Shabbos.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Rabbi Rafi Mollot, and I'd like to share with you a beautiful idea from this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, Terumah, tells us all about the construction of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the dwelling place for God's holy presence on earth. And among the items that we are instructed to build in the tabernacle, perhaps the most central of all was the Aron, the ark, that container which housed the tablets of the law that Moshe brought down from Mount Sinai and the Torah itself. There's something very interesting in the instructions of the construction of this item, this Aron. It tells us that the height must be 1.5 cubits, the width must be 1.5 cubits, and the length must be 2.5 cubits. The Shla asks, why are the measures of the Aron all in half measures? The Shla tells us that the person who wishes to absorb the message of the Torah that's contained in the Aron, made of half measures, must understand that he himself is only half, he's only part of a whole. He has to contribute to society. He has to help others. He links himself to a community so that he can work to improve their lives along with his own. He looks at himself as incomplete. He looks at himself as a work in progress. He looks at himself as someone that constantly needs to work on growing and improving. And if someone comes along and upsets him, he sees himself not as something so complete and whole and great that he should go ahead and get upset at someone else, but rather he can humble himself and say, you know what? I'm only a partial individual. I'm not the greatest thing since sliced cheese. I can handle a little bit of upset from someone else and look at it as an opportunity for growth rather than getting upset. When something doesn't go his way, he can look at it as an opportunity for growth rather than getting upset. That's the lesson of the half measures of the ark, the container for the Torah. Let's all absorb this message of the Torah in this week's Parsha to understand that we need to act like a half. We need to always look for opportunities for growth. We need to always look for opportunities to improve. We can look for ways for how we can be the missing piece in someone else's life, to be the missing piece in the community around us. And in this way, we'll improve our lives, we'll improve others' lives, we'll improve the world Hashem has created for us to live in. I've been Rabbi Rafi Mollot. More of my content on youtube.com/Reb Mollot. Have a wonderful Shabbos.